Oh, hey guys. Woo! This is gonna be exciting. What's up, you guys? My name is Jerald Walker Jr. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you're excited. We're getting into Beethoven's third movement here of his second symphony, his very first official scherzo, at least within a symphonic work. For those of you that are new, I am doing a 37 video course on Beethoven's 9 symphonies. In addition to analyzing this third movement, I will also be putting in the history behind this symphony, the origin story behind Beethoven's second symphony, what's going on in his life, what's going on in his head, what time of year was this, when was the first premiere, all that stuff, guys. So be sure to stay with me. I hope you're excited. I know I am. This is gonna be fast, guys, so buckle your seatbelts and be sure to not forget to like, to comment, and subscribe to this channel. We'll get right into it. So as I mentioned before, this movement is indeed a scherzo. What is a scherzo? A scherzo is a really fast dance. It's a really upbeat, really fast dance, usually in the feel of 1. And by 1, I mean 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1. Now, of course, what makes this scherzo really exciting and really interesting, it isn't even the modulations, honestly, which actually is a shocker. But it's actually the dynamics. Now, of course, Beethoven's dynamics have always been crazy, but this just by far, I mean, you can only imagine what the audience was like when they first heard this. I mean, it's just shocking. Now, very similar to a minuet, a scherzo also has 2 big parts. It has the scherzo fast dance-like stuff, and then it also has the trio part, to which both big parts are also divided up into 2 sections within them. The first part of the scherzo section, or theme 1 if you want to call it, is 16 bars long. Well, I can definitely say Beethoven did a better job this time. At least it's not like the first symphony where he only had 8 measures. What's also interesting is the phrase structure behind this theme as well, but I won't go into detail. I won't dive into all that. Like I said, eventually I will make a detailed course on all these symphonies, but not right now. Over. So from a general standpoint, I'll just point out the dynamic. If you look in the very first section, you have forte, the first measure, piano, then forte. And then for the next 4 bars, we have piano. And then all of a sudden, we have this shocker fortissimo, and then we get back to forte. This basically then repeats itself. It's kind of like being in the middle of a war ground, honestly. Just hearing all these gunshots go off, honestly. We then get to measure 17, which then we get to the second part of the first big part of this scherzo movement. This second part being the development section. But of course, as I've mentioned before, the second part has the development, and then later down the road, the theme 1 comes back. Now, modulation-wise, we do get to B-flat major by measure 20, although you don't really feel it until 21 when you get the theme. We then get to measure 39, which then we have theme 1 come back again, in the key of D major. So we get all this dynamic stuff again, and then we get to measure 51, where all of a sudden it's just like, what's going on? We got this little pitter-patter of feet or something. What's going on? He's going to a different key. He's modulating a little bit. It's all quiet. It's going back and forth between the violinists. What's happening? This then leads us into measure 60, which then we get kind of a written-in coda. Again, a coda being an additional ending. Now, I know we haven't made it to the end of this movement yet, but it will make sense when we do all this again and we actually end with this. But I kind of view 60 as a coda. This is because, well, this isn't really theme 1 anymore, and well, we certainly aren't going to develop again, so what else is there to call it, honestly? Therefore, we're going to call it a coda. This then takes us to the first ending at measure 84, which will then repeat and takes us back to the beginning of the development section. We do all that stuff again, and then we get to the trio section. The trio is the second big part of the whole movement, by the way. The first 8 bars of the trio section is the very first part of the trio. This is in the key of D major, and this is all placed within the oboes and the bassoons, with a little additional horn at the end. We then get to the second big part at measure 93, where now we're just dealing with the strings. He then all of a sudden takes us to F sharp major, just out of nowhere. Where in the HE double hockey 6 did this come from? But that's okay, because F sharp is a part of the D major chord that we just came from, so it's just like basically taking a D major chord and stripping everything away except leaving F sharp. Then adding a few E sharps in there to really emphasize this is now the new key, and then we just do an arpeggiated stuff to make it official, F sharp major. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, there are not that many professional recordings that actually considers this, but If you look at measures 93 and 94, in measure 93 you have a forte, but then in measure 94 you have a forzando. I don't know how many recordings you're going to get that actually plays that forzando. I don't know. Some of them does it, some of them doesn't. But I did want to point out that's there, and when you add that forzando, it makes a huge difference. I mean, just huge. He then brings back the trio theme at measure 109 and then plays it all out until we get to the repeat sign that takes us back to the second part of the trio. We then play the trio officially and ending that, and then we go all the way back to the beginning of the Scherzo. As a reminder, Beethoven definitely would have ended up repeating both sections of the Scherzo even after coming from the trio. This is what he used to do. This was a research that was done. I mentioned this in Symphony 1. If you want to go back to Symphony 1, Movement 3, I do mention it there. You'll find more information about that. But he does repeat both parts of the Scherzo when we get back. So then finally, when we get to measure 60 again, it finally actually sounds like a coda in some way. We then finally end the movement on the second ending in the key of D major. So with that being said, I hope that makes sense to you all. And now, before we get to the self-made presentation, I will now have Beethoven speak on his behalf on the history behind the symphony and behind his life that's going on within that. So Beethoven, if you want to take this away, please go ahead.
All right, thank you so much. Since my last concert in Vienna, featuring the premiere of my first symphony in April of 1801, I was not able to enjoy life as one would expect of me. After all, yes, I have been receiving very many requests for music that I hardly can keep up with. Yes, everyone has been loving my music that I have composed. And yes, upon these countless requests, I have been able to make quite a fortune for myself. And yet, something remained that continued to haunt me like a ghost. My deteriorating hearing. Because my hearing continued to remain a problem with me, I intentionally avoided all social gatherings whatsoever. I would appear as a misanthropic person to my peers just because I am too ashamed to ask someone, "Speak louder, for I'm deaf." It brings me such discomfort when I cannot hear the high notes at an opera, or a singer singing in the background, or a flautist performing a warming melody in the meadows. This slowly made me become God's angriest creature that would walk this earth. This made me visit many doctors and physicians as my hearing began to become even worse. I ended up seeing one of my closest friends who was a physician, Franz Wiegler. I was told that staying during the summer and fall in the countryside for a while in Hillegeestad may better my hearing and mental state of mind. However, it only made things worse. Being in isolation like I was only surrounded me with all my thoughts regarding how bad life was affecting me. This then led me to write a very emotional letter on October 6th, 1802, towards my two brothers, Johann and Karl, of my thoughts on committing suicide at my age of 30. This letter is known as the Hillegeestad Testament. Believe it or not, I never did send the letter. I just hid it away to be discovered when I'm dead. While being alone with my thoughts as I was, I decided to continue composing an uplifting symphony in D major, a symphony that would express all I was feeling and would force me to continue living as I now had a purpose. Of course, I have had sketches of this symphony since 1800, but most of the time was spent on this during late 1802. I decided to dedicate my symphony to a very dear patron of mine, Prince Lichnowsky. This is for his long dedication and him providing me with an annual salary of 600 florins until I obtained my steady job for myself. On April 5th, 1803, in the Theater an der Wien, I had a big concert that premiered my Second Symphony, Third Piano Concerto, and Oratorio Christ on the Mount of Olives. I even had my first symphony performed again. It was a very long concert, and rehearsals lasted nearly 6 hours in length. But all was worth it. This once again gave me the willpower to continue with what life brings me for both my sake and my music's sake.
Alright, thank you, Beethoven. So with that being said, you guys, let's get right into the self-made performance. I hope you enjoy it. I will see you at the end of this film. Thank you. usually get a transition, but okay, sure. So with that being said, you guys, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something new. And hey, even if you didn't, I hope that this stuff is exciting to you and you'll still stick with me as we get to the next video and we deal with the fourth movement of Beethoven's Second Symphony. We're almost done with this symphony, guys. I'm really excited. And don't forget to like, to comment, and subscribe to this channel for more analyzing content of classical music. I will see you guys next time. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.